Welcome into just another year, Chicago White Sox. This is our season preview episode. I am Matt Dilger. Alongside me is Matt Mirabella. We're going to go over a few key roster decisions that the White Sox made and our predictions for the season. But first, if you're ready for White Sox baseball, hit that like button down below. And if you're as excited as we are for opening day, comment Go Sox down below and we'll get started. The White Sox sent Sam Antonacci to AAA yesterday. The 23-year-old played in just 49 games in AA, and I think people are overestimating those few big moments he had both in spring training and the World Baseball Classic. So, Matt, first question to you here is, why do you think the White Sox sent him down to the minors, and do you think it's a good idea?
So mainly for me, I think a big thing is that he just hasn't had that experience even in AAA ball. Now, everything he did in the WBC, super awesome, but I think he's just got to get those at bats before we can decide he's going to be that everyday kind of player.
Yeah, I agree. And I really think it's important for a lot of these young guys to learn how to play more positions that they might need to play. I think if Antonacci can learn to play left or right field, it could be huge for his ability to get called up earlier in the season and as well as help the White Sox put the best 9 players on the field every day.
I agree with that. I know towards the tail end of spring training, they were putting him on the outfield a little bit. And I think that's the best case for him is if he can play a corner outfield spot, we get an injury, he steps in as even just a bench bat. He can come up, play a couple of series, go back down. Ultimately he just needs the playing time in AAA, I think.
Yeah, and then over on the pitching side, a thing I think we saw happening, but it wasn't a certainty, is Jedixson Paez. He was a Rule 5 draft pick from the Red Sox in the offseason. He has not played above high A ball, though, and last year did not pitch very much, less than 20 innings. So I think expectations have to be tempered. But what do you think about what you've seen from him in spring training and what we've read about what he can be going forward?
So I think the biggest thing with him is just looking back at that experience piece, like you're saying. And it's not saying that he can't come out and be great. I like what I've seen. I like where he can go. And I think he's got some great upside. It's just like you said, tempered expectations. So I got high upside for him and I'm hoping the best, but we'll see how things play out for him. I'm happy that he made the team though. It's awesome for him.
Yeah, I think if he can just survive the season, it will be a huge win for him and for the White Sox because again, he hasn't pitched above high A. Like that's a huge jump to skip AA and AAA and just be on the major league roster because he has to last all season for him to remain a part of the White Sox. Like his control is supposed to be the best part of his game. He's got a 70 grade by MLB Pipeline and a really good changeup. I know they view him as more of a long-term starter. So the question really is, can he perform in a low leverage role all season? Because that's all he needs to do is be an innings eater, I think.
Yeah, and I agree. And maybe he's one of those guys where he's, we need a long reliever. Hey, go out, throw 2, 3, 4 innings, get a solid pitch count. Or we have those bullpen days. That's where he comes in. I think that's best case scenario for him to just, get by more or less. I mean, we'll see how things go for him.
Yeah, just those bullpen games, because there'll be guys who need to be skipped because their arm hurts or whatever, and they don't necessarily want to call up one of the prospects. But I think him being a guy who hopefully he'll stay stretched out all season as well. And if they can get him anywhere near 100 innings, I think that would be huge for him going forward, even if that means next year he's back in AAA to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, if you got him on the team at this point, you may as well make the most of it. And, like you said, he's got great control. If he could just, get outs, let the ball get put in play and let his fielders do what they should do, things will work itself out. As long as he's not walking guys, I think he'll be all right.
All right, so now we're going to get on to our predictions part of the show. But first, please subscribe to the page. Our first goal is to get to 100 subscribers. We're just over halfway there. We need 49 to go. First and foremost, we're going to start with who is your White Sox MVP?
So for me, I've been looking forward to this all off season, just thinking about, who's going to do what, who's going to be those top performers. For me, I think it's plain as day, Colson Montgomery. When he came up last year, we've been looking forward to that since he got drafted. And, for him to come out, hit 21 home runs, I think that was awesome. I think he proved he can hit big league pitching. And yes, there were those stretches of the strikeouts, but that happens. Hitters get hot and cold. But ultimately, for him to have a whole season with the White Sox, I'm super high on him to really take over this team. So he's my MVP for 2026.
I think it's a really good choice. I am really looking forward to seeing what he can do with a full season and with pitchers who have a book on him and know what he does and doesn't do well. Also, he showed a lot last year at the shortstop position. I think he was a lot better than people thought he would be off the bat. The baseball savant numbers, I was like double checking them because his out above average was red, in the 80, 90th percentile, and I was surprised by that. I guess my biggest concern is the strikeouts, really. That's a concern I have about the guy I chose as well. And Murakami, he had some trouble with high velocity over in Japan, and they don't face it as often as you would see here in the majors. And that's what concerns me the most about Murakami. But really, I just think this guy's going to hit so many homers. Like, I think he's going to have a real chance to be the rookie of the year. I think he's got a real chance to hit 30, 35 homers. And the average is probably going to be low, but the on base should be high because pitchers are going to have to be careful with him because he's got so much power. And then the last thing for Murakami is there's an element here of proving people wrong, right? Like, he had the opportunity to sign with any team, and the long-term big money deals weren't there for him. And so that's how he ended up with the White Sox. And credit to Chris Getz for talking Jerry Reinsdorf into this. But I think that he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. And we've seen in the World Baseball Classic some issues with average, but there's one thing that has shown up pretty regularly, and that's the ability to go yard. And I think that I'm really excited to see what he can do.
I completely agree. He's personally my AL Rookie of the Year. I think he's a guy, like you said, he's going to have a good OBP number as long as he can just keep a good eye at the plate. Keep pitch counts up. He's going to see a lot of pitches that he will like. He's not going to see a ton that are in his favor. But again, draw walks, put the ball in play. He'll do good things for us.
Yep. On to our agreement here. Who is your White Sox Cy Young Award winner?
So I know we were both talking about this going back and forth. Again, I think it's Shane Smith just because I think a lot of our pitching that has more upside is down in the minors right now, and they'll get their time. But Shane Smith did a lot last year. I'll tell you what, he came out, he surprised me a little bit last year. He gets to kind of shove it to his team, the Brewers. So super pumped for that on opening day. I mean, didn't have the best record, but to come out, do what he did, ERA under 4, finish about 500 on the year. I think that's great considering the team he was playing on. I felt like so many times he was out there and he was actually the reason we were still in games, after 5-6 innings or so.
Yeah, he was straight up dominant for the first couple of months of the season. It was impressive to watch. He fell back a little bit down the stretch, and that inning buildup thing was real for him. But for me, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think when you look at the starting rotation as of opening day, I don't really think there's any chance that that's what it looks like on the 4th of July. I think that we're going to turn over at least 2 of those guys by the All-Star break. Hopefully not more, because I do think there is some upside and some interestingness to Anthony Kay. Maybe Eric Fetty can do a little bit and recapture some of the stuff he had the first time around with the White Sox. But I think Shane Smith is a guy who's going to be around all season and is really the only guy who I feel like has the ability to dominate going into this season on the starting pitching rotation.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Speaking of the starting pitchers, who do you think will be the first pitching prospect called up?
So I know that we've kind of obviously kept our eyes on a few guys. I am super high on Hagen Smith, which I'll be completely upfront. I was not high on him when we drafted him. what I've seen out of his development has put me a lot higher. It's made me realize the reason we drafted this kid is because he can pitch and hit the corners. And we've seen that in spring. And yes, he has struggled a little bit, but those glimpses are there. I think ultimately where he fell short last year, he wasn't getting those innings that, he should. And that's what he needs to pitch at this level. If he starts getting those innings, he just keeps on doing what he's doing. He's going to be good. He's developing that, extra pitch right now, which he's a lefty. He needs that, no doubt. So I think barring all aside, Hagen Smith, he's going to be the first pitching prospect we see.
For me, it's Tanner McDougal. And the biggest reason I think it's going to be Tanner McDougal is that I think that he's been in pro ball for the longest time of really the big three. And there's some more guys who we can talk about at a later date of guys who we think can help the major league roster. But Tanner McDougal's stuff is just so electric. I think that even if they call him up to be kind of a hybrid pitcher, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Maybe he's an opener. Maybe he's not going deep into games yet. If he's even pitching, 4 innings, 5 at the most, I think he's a guy who has the ability to get outs at the big league level right now. And that's not to say Hagen Smith doesn't. I just think that he needs a little bit more work because he needs that third pitch to be successful. And I think McDougal, the ability to throw those couple different fastballs along with his breaking stuff, it's already very good. But he does need to work on his control. Like he is the prototypical high octane guy who doesn't always know where it's going. But so I think McDougal, Smith, and then Noah Schultz as well. Like those guys were all impressive last year in stretches, but the consistency is where they kind of all fell short. McDougal was the most consistent as part of that AA Birmingham championship team. And that's really why I'm going with McDougal.
Yeah, and McDougal, I'm super pumped to see him too. What I saw earlier this spring, like you said, high octane guy. Like we need a pitcher like that. We need one dude who's just going to come out, he's going to shove and, can't be told otherwise. And that's what I like about him is he does have a lot of good stuff that a lot of our pitchers don't have. So I think he's also a great pick.
Yeah, it's like you said before, like the upside is all in AAA. That AAA
Right.
rotation is going to be nasty. McDougal with McDougal, Smith, and Schultz, like it's going to be nasty, and that's really cool. Like it's nice to have guys that you think have a lot of upside knocking on the door. Now, I don't think, I think the thing about Charlotte is that no matter what, like your numbers are going to be inflated. We've seen that over the years. The place is a hitter's paradise. So we got to be careful not to read too much into ERA numbers when it comes to Charlotte and more of what are the people who are there seeing from these guys.
Yeah, I completely agree.
On to the position player front. I'm going with Sam Antonacci for the first position player prospect to come up. I think that the White Sox, there's been some subtle things that they've done that make me say that they think he is close to being major league ready. And something you mentioned when we first brought him up about his ability to play a corner outfield spot is huge because they really like Chase Mydroth. And then Miguel Vargas is going to get a lot of run here because they want to see if he can be a piece for the team in the future. But Antonacci, he played shortstop in the World Baseball Classic. I think long-term his best position is second base. But Chase Mydroth had a good first season with the White Sox and has shown some different things that allow him to stick there. Like he's a different player than some of the other prospects, than a Colson Montgomery, who's pretty much mostly power and defense. There's a lot more speed. He has ability to get on base. He is smart base runner. And so I think that Antonacci has to be able to play a couple different positions in order to really raise his stock. But for me, it was a total toss-up between the two players, and yours is the other one, I think.
Yeah, and I mean between both these guys, it just kind of feels like a waiting game. It's just a matter of, when and what happens. But I was big on Sam too. Everyone is. We all saw the glimpses again, WBC, spring training. He's got all the tools to play. There just unfortunately doesn't feel like there's a spot for him right now. So going back to like you said, he hits that corner outfield spot, he gets that playing time. he's going to be just fine. He'll find his way. But me, Braden Montgomery, since we drafted him, he's been awesome to watch his development. It feels like looking back at it, just every single night. Yes, it's the minors, I know, but he's just doing something different. He's going out there, he's doing his thing, and he's just unreal. I mean, some of the numbers you see from him, like last year, yes, average of 270, 12 home runs, and some of the slug is down. But ultimately, you got to remember, this guy's going to be an everyday center fielder. Like, chances are, me personally, I would put this guy top of the lineup. Not tomorrow, but over the long term, if he can end up being our everyday center fielder, he can hit, 1, 2 in the order. I think we got exactly out of him what we intentionally drafted him to do.
Well, I think when you look at Braden Montgomery, like even if he gets moved to right field, that's fine. He's got the arm for both positions. He's got a cannon out there. And really, I think when you look at him, he's a guy who he's young as well, obviously, and he continues to grow into his power. And since we acquired him, I think it's been a big thing to just want to rush these guys up, right? We've been struggling for a while. This team has been terrible 2 years ago, obviously the worst team in history, and pretty bad last year and unwatchable for the first half of the season, really, outside of Shane Smith's start days. And so I think a lot of people are really like grasping on to the moments they've seen out of both Antonacci and Montgomery. And we have to pump the brakes and remember these guys have played 50 games at AA, less than that for these guys. So they need some more time. We can't expect these guys to just hop right up to the big leagues and just immediately be stars.
No, I completely agree. And that's the unfortunate piece is, we've always known we have this great farm system. We have these great players in there. It's just time. They just need to do their time in the minors. And if they catch a hot streak and they just figure it out, they'll get their call up, no doubt. It's just unfortunately they need to, like you said, get those at bats, take their time, and we just get a little bit excited about them. There's nothing wrong with that.
And I expect to see both of these guys this season at some point. I don't think they're going to spend the whole seasons in the minor leagues, barring, injury or drastic regression. We're looking at two major league players here that we're talking about. So I think it's just a matter of who gets called up first. And Antonacci wins my tiebreaker because he's starting the season a little bit closer to the majors.
Yeah.
So next we're going to go over to the home run leader. It looks a lot like our MVPs. What makes you say Colson Montgomery?
So like I said, when he came up last year, yes, there's a lot of strikeout numbers, but he's, first season in the majors, young kid, high expectations. But to hit 21 home runs in just under a half a season, there were so many times where you could see the pitcher would make a mistake and you're like, that ball is gone. He's got that dead red hitter's vision where he sees that ball over the middle plate and he can, put it over right field, no problem. I think you give him a full season. He's got a full off season now with the team. He's had spring training. I think he's hitting 34 plus home runs this year.
Is that your number? 34?
I'm going with 34. I wanted to say higher, but I think your guy, there's a chance he might.
Well, so my thing is like, it's real easy to be like, Colson Montgomery played 71 games last year. You can double his home run total. Like that's how we are, right? On pace for 42 homers, but like that doesn't feel realistic, like it just doesn't feel realistic that he can in his first full season hit 42 home runs. I mean, I also think I think both of these guys are going over 30. But my number for Murakami is 37. I think he's going to hit 37 homers, and I think they're going to come like in bunches, and I don't think they're going to come early. Like I think he's going to get off to a somewhat slow start. Like I don't expect him to be like hitting like a $150 with no homers and at the end of April. But I think it's going to take him some time to adjust, just because like I mentioned before, like you don't see 98, 101 on a regular basis in the Nippon League. And that's what he's going to face every day in Chicago. And then you look at like the Tigers pitching staff and you see Skubal and Framber, and it's like, well, I mean, that's like the kind of, he's going to see a lot of like really tough lefties in this division. And so I think that it's going to take him some time. But I think there's going to be a period where we're like, oh my God, Murakami, we're going to look up and Murakami's going to hit 10 homers in 15 games. And we're going to be like, what the hell? Why did nobody else want this guy?
Yeah, no, I think like you said, he's gonna have that slow start, but once things start to click for him, he starts seeing that velocity, maybe sees a few of those tough lefties to know like how like what hard pitching is in our division. Some of those righties that are, a little bit easier to hit, he's gonna start piecing them. And like you said, if he has that, 10 home runs in a 15 game stretch, I would not be surprised by any means.
And if the White Sox can get some leads and actually hold them for once, then we can see he won't face quite as tough pitching, right? You don't see the best relievers when you're losing, they don't throw them out. So I think that the whole lineup being a little deeper and a little stronger will also help both of these guys to have the opportunity to see better pitches.
No, I completely agree. It's just a different feel to the team this year, like all in all, and I couldn't be more excited.
All right, so next we're going to go over to our breakout players.
All right,
I
so
went back and forth a lot on this because it's hard, right? Like I don't think you could say Coulson as a breakout player. I think he had his breakout. And then like Murakami, like you can say like there's that element of for rookie of the year, should it be able to go to someone who's played in the second highest baseball league on the planet? Obviously Major League counts it, but I don't think you can count those guys, right? I don't think you can count Kyle Teal either, but I do think that Edgar Caro has a chance to really break out. I think the opportunity in front of Edgar Caro is one that I wasn't sure he was going to get, because having the first month where he will be the primary catcher is so big for him. He is a guy who like didn't really hit right-handed pitching last year. Like he posted like around a 600 OPS against righties. And so like I think there's an element of Will Venable would have probably not played him as much at the beginning of the season as he's going to play now, even in the DH role. And he's always had more power from the left side. So if he can just improve the contact enough, he's got a great eye. And if he hit 4 of his 5 home runs last year as a left-handed hitter, despite hitting 220 against righties as a left-handed hitter. So I think if he can even get that up to like 250, now that's a lot, 30 points of batting average. But if he can get that up to like 250, I'm not asking for him to be a 300 hitter as a left-handed hitter. But if he can get it up to 250, I think that OBP will climb a little more too, because guys won't be able to attack him as much. And if he can just put some balls in the seats, then he can use that elite eye more as a lefty and not just when he's hitting right-handed.
yeah, and that's the big thing with him is I love him from the right side of the plate. It feels when he comes up to the plate right-handed, he's very set to get a hit or at least just give a really good at bat. He starts filling in, like you said, just a little bit more from the lefty position of the plate. His production is going to skyrocket. Just a few small tweaks, a few more hits or walks, he'll make drastic changes to himself. Me personally, I went with Grant Taylor, and I think this guy's going to be our electric bullpen guy. I love the fire he's got. I mean, he's a total flamethrower. We saw the stuff from him last year. He's the kid who comes out and he's just got make you miss stuff. He's good morning, good afternoon, good night. That's what he's about. I mean, his K rate was 34%. Something you don't see from someone his age, but a lot of it could just be relying on blowing a fastball by guys. But also you got to remember he did have a pretty solid breaker. So you see a breaker from someone throwing almost 100. I like him a lot. I think that he's going to be a solid piece in our bullpen. And honestly, I think he's going to be our closer. He's going to be the guy who's, called on, come in, shut the door, like no BS, get it done.
Yeah, I really wonder, like my biggest question around Grant Taylor is how in the world are they going to use him? Right? Like they've talked about him potentially being a starter in the future. And so if like that's the case, he can't be your closer, right? Like they could do a closer by committee with him and Sir Anthony Dominguez. He could open some. He can just be a fire hose guy that you pitch for a couple innings. But I think if they actually want him to be a starter, then he's going to have to climb up somewhere near 100 innings, before you can realistically think you can make him into a starter for 2027. So I think the way they use him will say a lot about how they look at him. But I also cannot wait to watch this guy. I think he is electric, and I think there's a very real chance that he ends up as the closer at some point in the season. But also, I just don't know because like they might just want him pitching 2-3 innings a couple times a week. Like it could go so many different ways.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing I agree with you is where does he actually play out in the long run? Because I know that he was a starter. They want him to be a starter. With what he's done, I think you keep on riding him in the bullpen, and if it just gets to be we need him to pitch more innings, more innings, more innings, and he earns more innings and becomes a starter, that's great. But ultimately, I think just see what you need because you have some fresh arms in the minors. If you need to hit the emergency button, I guess you throw him in for a couple of starts, see what he does. But like you said, they really need to decide what they're going to do, and what we see is going to give us a good tell what they're going to do with him going forward.
And it's interesting, right? Because as White Sox fans, we've seen this exact thing, right? Like Garrett Crochet just a couple years ago. We saw it with Michael Kopech. We've seen it with Chris Sale. And so, like, it's almost like people forget how hard it is for that to happen because they've had so much success with it. But I thought the same thing about Garrett Crochet. I'm like, there's no way they can make this guy a starter. He doesn't throw enough innings. They use him high leverage late innings, and then all of a sudden they pick him up for 1 year and you trade him for, a bunch of guys we've talked about here. And so I think it's just really interesting, and I'm fascinated to see how they're going to use him this season.
Same thing that you said about Garrett Crochet. I thought for sure that guy was a lock in the bullpen. He came in and I was like, oh, we got our closer for the next 6 seasons minimum. I was like, he's going nowhere. And he came in, he showed he can start. And I mean, hey, before he did get rid of him, he was so much fun to watch as a starter.
Yeah, and he's been great over in Boston as well. All right, so last thing comes down to it. What do you have the White Sox record for 2026?
So I think a lot of White Sox fans are floating around the same area. I'm putting us above 70 wins. I think we'll finish around that 73 mark. We'll get closer to 500, obviously much more than we have in the past couple of seasons. But I think this team just has so much more. You saw towards the end of the year, really more so when June, July came around and they kind of, get that White Sox summer ball going where they just have that weird stretch. You saw much more competition internally. They were playing much more competitive and they're playing much better team baseball. Like that was a White Sox team I hadn't watched in so long. So to see them, coming back late in games, they can go out and they can, take a couple of series, no problem, or they can play 6 games in a week and win 4 of them. That just gives me a lot of confidence in this young group that they're not going to go out there. They're not going to be the best team in the AL Central, but they're going to go out there and compete. And with that, like I said, I think they're going to finish with 73 wins, 89 losses.
Yeah, I'm going with 70 and 92. I think they did get a lot better, and there is definitely that would be a huge improvement over the last 2 seasons. There's just so much variance with this team, right? Like you look at all the youth, and while that's exciting and we all think of all the positives that can happen, like they're going to struggle at times. And I think there's going to be times where there's like, half the lineup can't hit for a week. I just see that happening. And then, the pitching staff, Shane Smith has the opportunity to be dominant. He's shown that in short stretches, but there's just not enough high octane stuff where I think they're probably going to just go through stretches where they're bad. Like they're going to go through stretches as well where I think, like you said, they can win a couple series in a row. But I just think we're going to see 2 weeks in a row where they're like, oh, this team looks terrible for just long stretches because there's not enough starting pitching to start the season. And I understand why they didn't go out to get more starting pitching because of the guys they have in the minors, but there's just not enough. And then they're relying so much on so many young guys, right? Like Austin Hayes and Andrew Benintendi are your veteran hitters.
Yeah, no, and we're gonna see those rough stretches, no doubt. Like I said, I'm not putting these guys at a 500 team. If they did, obviously all of us would be ecstatic, have no complaints about that. But they'll have their hot stretches, they'll have their cold stretches, but the young guys, it's really, are they gonna, just be higher energy, more competitive, or is it gonna come down to like, oh, these guys just haven't seen the competition as consistently as other teams that have a much higher average age level are.
Yeah, and hopefully, as more of these young guys come up, they can keep infusing some of that young talent in, and they can have another stretch like they did in the second half of last season where they were really, really good. And hopefully we can see some more of that. But um, that's going to do it for our preview episode. Happy opening day, White Sox fans. And as always, go White Sox.
Go White Sox.